This is the nail in the coffin on estradiol or estrogen causing ED for men on TRT. Look, you guys know just as well as I do that this is the most controversial topic in the world of testosterone. And it's not because, I don't think it's because of individual experiences, it's more because of ideology. This is what happens, right? Somebody comes out with this new, seemingly cultish, seemingly dogmatic, like it seems as if they are the majority type of ideology around one thing or the other regarding physiology. It seems to make sense. There's certain logic that's kind of caked into it. There's certain truths that are caked into it. Estradiol, cardioprotective, right? Neurologically protective. People understand that if they take an AI and their estrogen goes below 15 or ends up at 10 or something, that they feel terrible, their joints hurt, they have transient arthralgia, their libido goes away, erections suffer, all these kinds of things, and they generally feel shitty. So people are naturally inclined to then go for the other side, okay? Estrogen's cardioprotective, it's good in all these areas, so let's just let it go. However, what I'm about to present to you is a paper that outlines an actual cutoff in picograms per milliliter, which does seem to align with a lot of people's opinions, including TRT doctors, a lot of people's experiences, including men on TRT. This is an actual cutoff of estradiol in the picograms per milliliter range, which you should aim to not go over. It's a threshold, after which you are much more likely to have erectile dysfunction on TRT. Specials on product for the week, 20% off Supercharge Dopamine and Nootropics Mastery. These are video courses. Code for that is 20 now. Cortex stack. The buy one, get one free is over. We'll run another one again soon, but guess what? It's still 25% off. Code for that is 25 Cortex. Go get a bottle right now. Codes are in the description of the video. Torque Nootropic Stack, 15% off. Code for that is 15 now. This is all day energy and focus. Lastly, I'm a consultant and coach on TRT, protocol optimization, energy, nootropics, erectile dysfunction, sexual dysfunction, host of other things. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. Okay, so the paper that we're going to be operating from, so that folks that are interested in this, inquisitive minds, can simultaneously read the paper, have the paper up as we're watching this video, or go and reference this paper if you need to. I would save it, email it to yourself, put it in an iPhone notes section and like a note, and understand every single facet of this paper, which I'm going to break down. It is titled "The Association Between Elevated Serum Estradiol Levels and Clinically Significant Erectile Dysfunction in Men Presenting for Andrological Evaluation." The bottom line on the estradiol's relationship with the male erection really has to do with venous leakage or venous occlusive disorder. And essentially, to simplify what that is, it's just leaky veins. Okay, think about leaky veins, meaning corpus cavernosal tissue. This is penile tissue. Arteries are not able to gain and maintain and facilitate trapping of blood in said arteries. So blood essentially just leaks out, and you have the inability to maintain an erection. You have positional dependent erectile dysfunction during sex. Or if you change positions, you lose your erections. Your erections are generally soft, not rigid. They don't stay rigid for long periods of time. This is indicative of venous leakage. I have highlighted the various papers. This is just one of them that show us very particularly either via a VEGF or vascular endothelial growth factor mechanism or a nitric oxide mechanism that increased estradiol leads to venous leakage. It's essentially that high estradiol levels past a threshold, which we're going to get to, induce a functional insufficiency or deficiency in the venous system of the erectile tissues. All right, let's go back to this paper, which actually highlights a threshold in estrogen in picograms per milliliter for men that are on TRT. In other words, it's saying, don't go above this threshold, you're going to get ED, right? Or you drastically increase the chances of getting erectile dysfunction past this threshold in picograms per milliliter on estradiol. Stay below this threshold, you're safe. Now, there are a lot of gems in this paper, so I'm just going to go through each of these gems. Here's one of them. In this exploratory analysis, serum E2, or serum levels of estradiol, were statistically significantly associated with increased odds of clinically significant ED or erectile dysfunction, independent of serum total testosterone, age, BMI or body mass index, and smoking status. Here's another gem. A small study by Mancini et al. Found that serum E2, or serum estradiol, was associated with a greater degree of ED secondary to venous leakage. In animal studies, one group found that rabbits chronically treated with serum E2 and phytoestrogens had significantly reduced total testosterone levels. Well, that would make sense, right? The higher the estrogen levels, the more the pituitary essentially is shutting down in response to that. And the same could be said for the opposite side of the spectrum. When estrogen is lower, the pituitary recognizes that, right? In that state, it produces more gonadotropins. This is something that people have to remember. Estradiol is the main driver of the feedback mechanism for your gonadotropins. So again, in animal studies, a group found that rabbits chronically treated with serum E2 and phytoestrogens had significantly reduced serum TT levels, total testosterone, and relaxant response of the corpora cavernosum to acetylcholine, nitroglycerin, and nitrogen transmission were significantly reduced compared to the control response. So thinking about mechanism, there's venous leakage, there's nitric oxide mediated effects that are taking place here that are negative for erectile function in the presence of excessive estradiol. Also, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which you do actually have receptors for in the male penis, the corpora cavernosum, relaxant response, which allows blood to go and enter the tissues and then stay trapped in the tissues, was significantly reduced. Okay, that relaxant response in response to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine and cholinergic receptor binding in the male penis was reduced when rabbits were treated with serum E2. There are murine studies that demonstrate that estrogen to testosterone ratio elevation, meaning a higher level of estrogen per the level of total testosterone that you have, resulted in negative effects on both physiologic and behavioral sexual responses, including prolongation of mount, intromission, and ejaculation latency, right? So a skewed estrogen to testosterone ratio, higher estrogen per what ultimately is lower than it should be testosterone, results in negative effects both in the physiologic parameters, so we're talking about blood flow, venous leakage, right, nitric oxide, arterial flow, and the behavioral sexual response, right? This is why libido, that's referring to libido, right? The mental visceral part of libido. That this is why when guys get past a threshold for them on estradiol, their libido suffers. Here's the big one, boys, okay? Based on the results of this analysis, there may be a threshold of serum E2 at 32 picograms per milliliter, above which erectile function is negatively affected. The results of this analysis may have future implications in the routine testing and management of men presenting with sexual dysfunction. Now, they go on to say perhaps control of estrogen levels with treatments such as aromatase inhibitors could be an important aspect of management. Aromatase inhibitors are hard drugs to take, okay? They're hard on your body. They can reduce serum estradiol very, very quickly. Inhibiting aromatase in the brain tends to reduce libido. This is something that's very critical for libido, aromatase expression in the brain. So it is a fine balance. And those drugs are not the most optimal drugs that exist to lower estradiol. They're just not. They lower them too fucking quickly. It's hard to dose them correctly unless you're doing blood work on day 3, on day 4, on day 5. You really don't know where the estradiol is going and your symptoms are back and forth. So they're difficult drugs to take. I admit that. I really don't like aromatase inhibitors, to be honest. Now here's the tricky part, because everybody tends to take these conversations and go, okay, well, you're on the low estrogen side. You're on the pro AI low estrogen side, and you think estrogen is bad. Or if you're on the other side, people look at guys like Dave Lee and Danny Bossa and the TRT and hormone optimization people, and some other people now who are kind of somewhat pro or more pro estrogen, and go, you guys just think estradiol should be let go and whatever. That's bad. The truth is, people like me, with my position on it, based on my own sexual function, the sexual function of many men that I've dealt with, the data that I have on their labs, of estradiol and total testosterone, and the corresponding symptoms of erectile good function or erectile dysfunction, I'm operating from what I can see, right? Not what I hypothesize, or not what ideologically aligns with me, or not like what my favorite YouTube guru is saying, like my guy on a repeat forum or whatever. Like I'm operating from what data says and what the research says. But I know, and I want to make the point, again, as I have before, I just feel like I have to make this point. Estradiol, as this paper makes the point of, is critically important at certain levels. Although estrogen in excess may be detrimental for male sexual function, the importance of maintaining estrogen at appropriate levels cannot be discounted. It is understood that estrogen is important in normal development and function of multiple body systems, including the brain, heart, and bones. But estrogen has also been shown to play a key role in healthy male sexual function. They found that a guy with an aromatase deficiency, so a person who really couldn't convert androgens into estrogen, had sexual dysfunction, and then treated with estrogen resolved as sexual dysfunction. But again, brain aromatase expression is necessary, okay, for male libido. So this makes sense. If a guy doesn't have aromatase expression and you give it back to him, he's going to have his libido back. This does not equate to. So this is where people get this messed up, right? And these camps are battling back and forth. It's one extreme or the other. This does not equate to you want to aromatize as much as possible. Let estradiol go. Don't manage estrogen. Let it go to 50 or 60 picograms per milliliter, as long as you don't get gyno. This does not equate to that. This is not what this is saying. This is saying a person with aromatase deficiency who couldn't aromatize any of his androgens into estrogen had sexual dysfunction, which is predictable and actually laid out in the other academic papers. And when they restored aromatase, got his sexual function back. Great, you need aromatase for sexual function. But this doesn't say that you need sky-high estrogen for sexual function. You need aromatase expression. They even go on to say there was a cohort of men receiving both testosterone and anastrozole. This is a aromatase inhibitor. Those guys had poor erectile function and sexual desire than men who received testosterone therapy alone, suggesting that estrogens do play a physiologic role in healthy function, erectile function, and sexual desire. This is true. This is why it's a balance. This is why, if you take 0.5 or God forbid 1 milligram of anastrozole, I mean, this obviously depends on how much you aromatize. You take the estradiol sub 15 picograms per milliliter, you won't have libido. You're not going to have morning wood. You're not going to have good erections, and you're generally going to physically feel like shit. This is why a balance is necessary. And what they conclude in this paper is there's a threshold, and that threshold is 32 picograms per milliliter. This is why you've got videos like this. All right, have a look. Take us to a video by a dude named James Grage, who has a doctor who's called Brett Osborne on talking about TRT. And he makes a critical point that everybody on TRT needs to know about the ghost of testosterone replacement therapy. Have a look.
I said, you're calling me and you have ED problems, which he really doesn't. He's a very healthy guy, okay? No medical problems, just on a little bit of test. I said, it's probably your libido. What's your estradiol level? I don't know. You better go check it, because with estradiol, men are probably best at 20, 25, 30, 35, but the window, if I can get one point across, is extremely narrow.
All right, this is a TRT doctor, guys. I mean, these are the guys that are seeing men consistently and get to see many different individuals, not just themselves. A lot of people on Reddit are positing one thing or the other, are operating strictly from their N=1, which is a fallacy in science. You cannot do that, and you cannot trust a person who does that. These world-renowned or highly revered or highly experienced TRT doctors know the range. What did he just say? 20 to 30, and then he went to 35 picograms per milliliter. How is it possible that this paper right here, the association between elevated serum estradiol levels and clinically significant erectile dysfunction in men presenting for andrological evaluation of 32 picograms per milliliter, and Doc just said, and most people come to learn, the TRT guys know, the guys that are in it for a while, the guys that study the physiology, the guys that study the venous leakage and the occlusive disorders that arise from elevated levels of estradiol and a skewed testosterone estrogen ratio in favor of estrogen versus total testosterone. This is why these guys know that 20 to 30, maybe people can push 35. I've seen guys be able to push 40 and be okay and still not have erectile dysfunction, but generally you want to stay in that 20 to 35 range. Like, how is it possible that we know all this data is present, all these anecdotes are present, and this study finds above 32 picograms per milliliter, you run the risk of ED? They even brought a regression curve model, into this study. Then they go, therefore, 32 picograms per milliliter was chosen as the cutoff point to define an E2 level that negatively impacts erectile function. Right? You can go look at these graphs. You can look at how they adjusted for smoking and BMI and total testosterone. This is the paper. I'll shrink myself so that you can see it and go read it. The association between elevated estradiol levels and clinically significant erectile dysfunction in men presenting for andrological evaluation. Now, here's the tricky thing. When you are on exogenous hormones, you don't have a feedback system that really works correctly. HPTA, HPG, hypothalamus pituitary axis, hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, these things are shut down. So if you have like low levels of estrogen, that's not going to signify, that's not going to program the hypothalamus pituitary to make more gonadotropins. You don't make gonadotropins because you have adequate levels of testosterone. In addition to that, like if you're on 175 milligrams a week and you just tend to aromatize a lot, or maybe that's the dose that ultimately will convert to about 45 picograms per milliliter of estradiol, your body is not going to know how to regulate that higher level of total testosterone. And it may be the case that that level of testosterone, which takes you to maybe 1,000 or 1,150 or maybe even 1,200 nanograms per deciliter above the reference range or just at the top of free testosterone, that may be what you need in addition to DHT receptor binding, genetic activity, post-receptor binding, in order for you to get therapeutic benefits from testosterone. But at that level, at the therapeutic level where you get alleviation of your fatigue, your confidence issues, your brain fog, your energy issues, your slowed down metabolic rate, that level of testosterone might aromatize too much into estradiol, which is what makes this tricky. This is why either the judicious use of what should be compounded 0.125 milligram tablets of anastrozole with a pill cutter, potentially even split up into thirds where you're getting 0.03, or no, what's that, fourths, which you're getting 0.03, may be warranted in these situations, right? Anastrozole is a very potent drug. It's very strong. You shouldn't dose a lot of it. You have to, analyze your blood work and see where you are. Some guys will take 0.25 once a week and it keeps them between 20 and 30. And that's just perfect. It'd be great to be one of those guys. Me personally drops my estradiol way too quickly, way too fast, and way too much. So if I'm dosing anastrozole, it's got to be 0.03, 0.06, or if the testosterone dose is high enough, the HCG dose is high enough, 0.125. Or though, look, we do know that there are many things that can help reduce aromatase expression, that can help reduce actual serum estradiol levels. And there are things like optimizing thyroid hormones will help you to reduce serum estradiol levels. If that isn't enough, I did a long exhaustive dive into the research on selenium. Selenium inhibits aromatase at some level. One of selenium's metabolites, called methylselenic acid, is actually being studied as an alternative to aromatase inhibition in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer cases. Calcium D-glucarate, okay, I think people love to hate it because it's not an AI. It's not going to drastically lower your estradiol. However, it will effectively force your detox organs to prevent estradiol from entering back in the system, and therefore you're going to excrete via urine and via waste more estradiol than if you weren't taking calcium D-glucarate. That will lower blood levels of estrogen in men. So calcium D-glucarate can be effective. It really is dose dependent, so it's going to be dependent on the dose for you. 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 milligrams I've seen guys have to go up to get a marked reduction in serum estradiol levels. You're going to have to find your balance. Diindolmethane, right? Or DIM, right? Converting your active estradiol into estrone and estriol, right? And then forcing them out of the system faster. This is a thing too. I mean, these things don't acutely just drop the estrogen like an aromatase inhibitor would. They work in a different way to help you to clear estradiol from the system faster, to just upregulate the effectively the metabolism of estrogen. If you're taking tadalafil, you will get a marginal effect on estradiol. It's not going to be significant, marginal. Maybe a mild reduction, and that's via some aromatase genetic activity that tadalafil is able to exert on that particular system. There's a combination of Chinese herbs that you can find on Amazon. It is called myomin, and it is the only herbal preparation that is studied for the inhibition of aromatase expression and therefore the reduction of serum estradiol. Okay, so you might want to look into it. It's called myomin, and you can find it on Amazon. It's a collection of Chinese herbs. Everything that you can do to prevent aromatization in your body, which is lose body fat. Okay, I mean, you can't try to prevent aromatization or reduce aromatization, reduce estradiol on TRT, and stay overweight. It just isn't going to happen. So so you've got to get your body fat stores down, and that may take you 6 months. May take you a year, may take you 3 months, depends on how lean you are. You must work on that. Secondarily, alcohol increases the conversion of testosterone to estradiol. This is one of the many reasons you're going to find high-level individuals, high-level males that are business people, that are moving forward in life, that have goals, that always seem like they have energy. They don't drink. You're never going to catch me drunk at a bar, throwing down tequila shots, and drinking at nighttime, waking up hungover. Fucking never. There are estrogenic reactions, estrogen receptor binding, modification of the estrogen system, modification of serum estradiol, really binding to the receptors in recreational drugs that people consume, specifically cannabis. Right? So if you're smoking pot every day, you're more estrogenic quantifiably than you would be if you didn't smoke pot every day. And then, of course, there's the food-based sources of essentially diindolmethane. It's not exactly chemically, structurally the same as diindolmethane, but similar. In foods like broccoli, basically cruciferous vegetables, where if you eat a lot of them, and a good way to do that, maybe like a vegetable tray, like one of those you see at parties with carrots and cauliflower and broccoli and some ranch dip or something, then yeah, you will be facilitating more estradiol conversion to the other estrogens and shuttling them out of the system. The bottom line is this, guys, all right? This is the most controversial topic in TRT. And there's some people that believe that you can just let the estradiol go and that's somehow going to downregulate estrogen receptors down the line, which may happen. I'm not entirely sure if that happens, and therefore that response balances out. We'll say you're not going to balance out gyno. You're not going to just like let it go and suddenly gyno will go away. There are people that are more susceptible, right, to these venous occlusive and venous leakage disorders that take place in penile tissue. As a result, direct result of estradiol mediating nitric oxide and vascular endothelial growth factor than others. And so some people can sit at 45 picograms per milliliter for 6 months and not have ED. Eventually, they're probably going to have erectile difficulties if they stay at that level. It really is all about the threshold, which makes the serum on estradiol very, very tricky because you don't see at the tissue level, at the penile tissue level, right, in the arterial level, right, in the receptor binding level, we don't see how much estrogen is really going there in these tissues. When we're looking at science, okay, published, established science, and looking at how to apply that science or extrapolate that science into our lives as men that are on testosterone replacement, we want a general gauge. We want something to shoot from, right? We want some sort of direction, and then we kind of adjust from there. It may not be exact on the direction where we end up feeling good and everything functions good, but at least having a ballpark, right, an estimate. A target to hit is useful for men on TRT regarding estradiol levels. And that target is 32 picograms per milliliter. I want to hear your thoughts, okay? Because there are going to be guys that can tolerate 40, 50 picograms per milliliter. Again, it's hard to understand exactly the science of that and how long that will last for them. There's men that definitely know that above 35 or above 30 even, erectile dysfunction happens, libido goes down by the wayside, and they generally have a terrible experience on TRT. Well, they feel fatigued and have brain fog and all this kind of stuff. What is your take? What has your experience been? Right? Comment in the comment section. If you've got bloods, back up your assertions with your bloods. That is the best way to have people that are scientifically minded trust you and validate what you're saying. If you have something to say about it, if you just have an opinion, post your opinion. That's what this is about. Doesn't have to be strictly scientific. I'd really appreciate it. Whatever it is, comment. If you are a guy on TRT that is having a hard time dialing in your protocol, that is one of the things that I do consultations on. All right, I've been coaching guys on TRT for many years, over a half decade. So this is where I get a lot of the information. I've seen a lot of people's blood work and a lot of people's accurate reporting of symptoms. You can hire me in under a minute for TRT protocol optimization, sexual dysfunction, ED, and a host of other things, including nootropics at livecortex.com. Specials on nootropic stacks, 25% off the Cortex stack. Code for that is 25 Cortex. The Torque nootropic stack, most purchase smart drug, smart pill, nootropic on the internet for sure. Our competitors are not competing with this stack. 15% off right now. Code is 15 now. All right, boys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Like the video if you like the video. I'd really appreciate it. It makes a big difference and it's free for you to do. So please just hit that like button or dislike the video. You know, if you disliked it, totally cool. Thanks though, pal. Sub to the channel because you are going to love the scientific breakdowns and all the content that comes out of this channel endlessly for years now and years moving forward. I've appreciated the time that you spent with me watching this video. Hope you have a great day. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one.